Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, my name is Amy. I'm actually from Ottawa. So I kind of just heard about this from Parker as well. But I'll get kind of into it through the presentation. So what I really want to talk about is something that we're starting in Ottawa right now. It's called the Chinese Canadian Collective. It's a new organization that's kind of starting out. So really how it first started is I just graduated from Carleton University and the journalism program there. And while I was there, I started an Asian Canadians Association, which really focused on kind of creating a community. So how it started was lack of diversity in the classroom. So really like, I was more of like an arts program, arts electives, classes like that. And all the time I'd be like one, if not one of two, minorities in the classroom. So it would be kind of interesting. Like I felt like singled out sometimes as well. Like in my English literature, we would be talking about in first year, and like I didn't mind sometimes, but if we're talking about like we're talking about a Chinese literature book, and like everyone's like, oh, what's your opinion on it? Like I'm fine to share, but it was just like that. Those eyes were kind of on you, and then. In my last year even, I was taking a Canadian history class, and I was the only like visible minority there, one of two Chinese, one female though. So my teacher out of like 100 students knew my name, and I never even spoke to him. He's like, here's your assignment. I'm like, okay, great. But so I don't know, those things, and then like for instance, there's microaggressions like you kind of face every day, and it's difficult when you're going to school and you have no one to talk about. Like, hey, you know, you can kind of discuss and have someone who's kind of like an ally there for you, who you can kind of have like a safe person to talk to about these things and not just like brush off your shoulder. Like, you know, journalism, we'd be talking about like, you know, issues in the media, and they'd be talking about like, you know, everything from Islamophobia to, you know, like just caricatures and the ways that minorities are displayed. And sometimes in classrooms, like the teachers, being white professors, would characterize the news differently, and you never had like those different voices. So yeah, what really spiked it is I know a lot of the online stuff is a really huge potential for discussions, but there's nothing that was really tangible or hands-on or a space that we could talk about. So establishing that was really great. We also started a University of Ottawa chapter right after. So we did a bunch of things with this. We did events, documentary screenings, Lunar New Year, so things that were, if people were like, for instance, out of town, they would have somewhere where they could have a space where they could celebrate a holiday with not maybe their family, but like with new friends as well. So we had discussions. And yeah, that's how I met Parker. We screened his documentary, and he came and did a Skype session with us. We always had food at our events. We tried to do educational things, so we throw in like Chinatown tours, talking about the community in Ottawa. What we found is a lot of resistance. People would be like, oh, it's a tour, that's kind of boring, so we like put dinner with it, so then they're like, okay, I'll come for the food. But like, that's still kind of what we're struggling with. I find like that's one issue we have is like people will come for the food, but then we want them to stay for the discussions afterwards. So really what we're trying to do right now is kind of fill the gap in Ottawa. We don't have as huge of a demographics, I guess, as Toronto or Vancouver, which has bigger populations of Chinese Canadians, Asian Canadians. So we really want to have that platform there and make it intergenerational. Because right now our organization is very like youth focused because that's how we started in the university, but we're really hoping to get it more developed from there, and just have a lot of, as well, have a space where there's like a type of validation and acknowledgement of issues that people face, because a lot of the times, you know, these voices go unheard, and they're really left so that you don't have anyone to share these discussions with. So kind of the reason as well that we moved from focusing on Asian Canadians Association to Chinese Canadians was the idea that when we started Asian Canadians Association, we want to really incorporate, you know, lots, the whole, like, people from different backgrounds that identified, like Vietnamese communities as well as South Asian communities, et cetera, But what happened is, and if you saw in the photos, is mostly like Chinese Canadians would come out, or Vietnamese Canadians. So it wasn't as representative. And I know like I graduated and they're continuing it, and the club is trying to focus on expanding it. But that was one issue where we weren't really representing people properly. So I think with the Chinese Canadian collective, because I am Chinese Canadian, I can actually represent them well, even if, for instance, like Vietnamese Canadian, they have such a different history from us. Like the boat people history, the food, everything is different. So I remember even when we were doing like potlucks and stuff, I'd be like, guys, tell me what to order, like what kind of food, and then everyone's like, oh, you should order like banh mi, and I'm like, oh, I've never even tried this, but I didn't realize it was such like a quintessential thing. So I think that's kind of a struggle right now. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll wrap it up. But we're Asian Canadian. Chinese Canadians have really dominated that word, and I think it's partially because Chinese hasn't ever been like a really positive word. It's always had like a negative connotation where it's like, oh, Chinese food, or those like Chinese people or whatever. So it's kind of been thrown around, and we've embraced this word Asian, but I think it leaves out a lot of people from that dialogue. So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. We have an online platform where we try to have it connections through that. We're doing photo projects here, again, kind of use so people kind of share their experiences, and we're trying to get it seen publicly as well, like public art. So yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah, so those are stuff you can find us online. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Comments, questions? Comments, questions? No?